Okay, Unit 1.3, New Monarchs of 16th Century Society and Expansion, the Age of Exploration and Conquest. So, God, glory, and gold will be our primary motives for exploration. Christian crusaders in the 11th and 14th centuries had created European interest or sparked European interest in Asia and the Middle East. Our rise of nation states, or our new monarchs, will result in competition for empires and trade. Portugal and Spain are going to seek to break the Italian monopoly on trade with Asia. The Renaissance impacted and caused the age of exploration and conquest with its search for knowledge and the revival of Platonic studies, especially mathematics, awareness of living at the dawn of a new age, and the invention of the printed book resulted in the spread of accurate text and, more importantly for our discussion here, maps. There will also be cartography advances that will improve navigation or map advances. Martin Behaim will give us a terrestrial globe in 1492. Waldseemüller will give us the world map in 1507, and Mercator will give us the map in 1575. Technological advances will also facilitate sea travel. Advances in astronomy will help in charting locations at sea. Instruments such as the magnetic compass, created and invented in circa 1300, pointed to the magnetic north, making it easier to determine direction. A number of instruments will be used to determine latitude by measuring the altitude of celestial bodies, one of which is the quadrant, circa 1450, used to determine latitude by measuring the altitude of celestial bodies. The other is the mariner's astrolabe, circa 1480, used to determine latitude by measuring the altitude of celestial bodies as well. And then finally our cross staff, circa 1550. It was used to find the latitude by measuring the altitude of the pole star above the horizon. Other technology are going to be ships. The Portuguese caravel, circa 1450, will be lighter and faster than the ships that the Spanish had, which were called galleons, and much better suited for exploration along the African coast, and could also sail into the wind. We also see lateen sail and rope riggings at this time, which will enable sails to be quickly and efficiently maneuvered to take advantage of wind power. Also, the axial rudder or side rudder will be in addition to boats, which will provide for improved change of direction. And also our gunpowder and cannons, which will now provide protection against hostile ships and will facilitate the domination of indigenous people in the lands that we are getting ready to explore. The commercial revolution, which resulted in capitalist investments, is going to spur overseas exploration, and also a religious desire to convert pagan peoples in the New World. Will also serve as an important impulse for our exploration to the New World. Portugal, its motives for exploration, economic, is seeking an all-water route to Asia to tap the spice trade, but religious motivation was to seek to find out the mythical Prester John, a Christian king somewhere in the east, for an alliance against the Muslims. Portugal explorers, Prince Henry the Navigator, is going to be our financier of numerous expeditions along the West African coastline in hopes of finding gold. And he will usher in a new era of European exploration. So he's kind of like our patron of exploration. Bartholomew Diaz, 1450 to 1500, was going to round the southern tip of Africa in 1488 for Portugal. Vasco da Gama is going to build on Diaz's route and complete an all-water expedition to India in 1498. He will bring back Indian goods, creating a huge demand for these products in Europe. This will be a huge blow to the Italian monopoly of trade with Asia and was a cause of the economic and political decline of the Italian city-states. Amerigo Vespucci will end up exploring Brazil for Portugal, perhaps the first European to realize that he had discovered a new continent in the New World. He was not the first to sight South America, however. Cabral had done that in a year or so earlier. America is named after him when a German cartographer honored Vespucci's false claim that he was the first to sight the new continent. Brazil is Portugal's major colony in the New World. Its administrative structure was similar to that of Spain in the New World, which we're going to talk about in just a second. In the 17th century, large numbers of slaves from Africa were imported for production of coffee and cotton, and most importantly, sugar, as talked about in the commercial revolution of the 18th century. Significant racial mixture between whites, Amerindians, and blacks resulted, and we will talk about this when we get to the setup or the administrative setup in South America. So our next exploring nation is Spain. Christopher Columbus, who was eager for Spain to compete with the Portuguese expansion under Ferdinand and Isabella, or new monarchs, he will be financed by them. In 1492, Columbus will reach the Bahamas, believing he had reached the Indies, somewhere west of India. And his 4 expeditions charted most of the major islands in the Caribbean, as well as Honduras in Central America. However, the monumental significance of Columbus's expeditions were that it ushered in an era of European exploration and domination of the New World. Bartholomew de las Casas, a priest and former conquistador whose father had accompanied Columbus on his second voyage, is going to give us a brief account of the destruction of the Indies in 1552. It publicly criticized the ruthlessness with which Columbus and his successors treated the Amerindians. His writings helped spread the black legend in Protestant countries where Spain was accused of using Christianity ostensibly for killing countless natives. In reality, Protestant countries like England were just as guilty of disseminating American Indian populations. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 was Spain seeking to secure Columbus's discoveries in the New World. Its provisions were that the New World would be divided between Spain and Portugal at the behest of Pope Leo V. Portugal was granted exclusive rights to the African slave trade, or asiento, which we will speak of in just a little bit. A north-south line was drawn down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Spain's territory was west of the line. Portugal's was east. Thus, Portugal retained Brazil and its claims to Africa, while Spain received the rest of the Americas. Vasco Núñez de Balboa discovered the Pacific Ocean after crossing the Isthmus of Panama in 1513. Ferdinand Magellan, his ship was the first to circumnavigate the globe, and he charted the enormous size of the Pacific Ocean. Our Spanish conquistadors began creating empires by conquering Indians. Hernando Cortez is going to conquer the Aztecs in Mesoamerica by 1521, and Francisco Pizarro, who's pictured here, will conquer the Inca Empire along the Andes Mountains in modern-day Peru in about 1532. So our Spanish conquistadors in Mesoamerica in modern-day Peru. Spanish Empire in the New World, or the Golden Age of Spain, as it comes to be called, resembled more the new imperialism of the late 19th and early 20th century by outright conquering entire regions and subjugating their populations. It was mercantilist in philosophy from early 16th century onwards. The belief that colonies existed for the benefit of the mother country and that mining of gold and silver was most important. The crown got 1/5 of all precious metals, accounted for 25% of the crown's total income. In 1545, there was the opening of the world's richest silver mines at Potosi in Peru, and it will usher in the Golden Age in 1545. Spain shipped manufactured goods to America and discouraged native industries from taking root, so to avoid competition with Spanish merchants, so mercantilism at its best. The structure of the Spanish Empire in the New World, it was divided, an empire divided into 4 viceroyalties, each led by a viceroyalty or a viceroy. Audiencias, or a board of 12 to 15 judges, will serve as advisor to the viceroy and the highest judicial body. So it's the structure of the government set up under the imperialistic Spanish. So back to structure, as I mentioned earlier, the encomienda system, the motive for the Spanish government was to seek to reduce the savage exploitation of Amerindians in the Spanish Empire. However, in reality, laws against exploitation were poorly enforced. The Amerindians worked for an owner for a certain number of days per week, but retained other parcels of land to work for themselves. So this is a system that was made to try to reduce savage exploitation, although exploitation was poorly enforced. Spain's ability to forcibly utilize Amerindian labor was a major reason why the Spanish Empire imported few slaves from Africa. So when we speak about the African slave trade in just a second, this is why Spain took very few slaves from Africa. Vocabulary-wise, mestizos are Spaniards who will come to the New World and marry Amerindian women, creating children of mixed white and Native American descent. And then Creoles are going to be Spaniards born in the New World to Spanish parents. So these are 2 terms that are going to become important as we talk about structure. So old imperialism, unlike the imperialism of the Spanish, is going to take place in Africa and Asia, and it's characterized by establishing posts and forts on coastal regions, but not penetrating inland to conquer entire regions or to subjugate their populations. This is in sharp contrast to Spanish imperialism in the New World, and in sharp contrast to the late 19th and early 20th century pattern of new imperialism, where entire nations were conquered and exploited for the benefit of the European colonial powers. Portugal, by 1495, had established forts and posts along the Guinea coast and penetrated inland to the Mali capital of Timbuktu in West Africa. And that's where Da Gama is going to set up trading posts in Goa and Calcutta in India. Also, Alfonso de Albuquerque laid the foundation for Portuguese imperialism in the late 16th and 17th centuries and established a strategy of making coastal regions that had been won from the Muslims a base to control the Indian Ocean. But did not seek to create an empire by penetrating inland. So definitely an old imperialistic style, and established an empire in the Spice Islands, or modern-day Indonesia, after 1510. He'll also become the governor of India between 1509 and 1515. Francis Xavier will lead Jesuit missionaries to Asia, where by 1550 thousands of natives have been converted to Christianity in India, Indonesia, and Japan. The Dutch Republic, or the Netherlands, will give us the Dutch East India Company, founded in 1602, and will become the major force behind Dutch imperialism. They will expel the Portuguese from Sri Lanka and other Spice Islands in Indonesia, and by 1650 will begin challenging Spain in the New World and control much of the American and African trade. France and England, first starting with France, we're going to talk about Jacques Cartier. In search of a northwest passage, he will explore the St. Lawrence River region of Canada, and Quebec will become France's first settlement in the New World, but not founded until 1608. English explorer John Cabot